Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we were discussing a Gaussian process yesterday, and so far what we have shown you that what we have discussed is that the properties of Gaussian distribution, that the marginalization of any subset of uh, component will result into a Gaussian distribution. Even conditional distribution over a Gaussian distribution is a Gaussian distribution. There are some sort of formulas that we have discussed how to find out the if there is a conditional distribution, how what is a mean and a variance. If it is marginalized, what is a mean and variance, right? Because it is a Gaussian distribution, so it can always be parameterized by two moment, first order and second order, like mean and variance in short, simple words. Then we said that even we can apply Bayes theorem over it. So if somebody gives you probability of X and probability of Y given X, so you can calculate probability of X given Y, right? Even probability of Y. So this is like all we have discussed, and after doing all those mathematical juggling, we have found out that these are the closed form of solutions available here, right? Then we discussed on like how to see the distributions over a function, and we have come up with a notion that because y can be defined as a phi w, phi is a design matrix, so w is y is also a Gaussian vector, right? And because it is a Gaussian, so we can find out mean and covariance matrix, and covariance matrix is nothing but a gram matrix, right? Then in short, we have said that like Gaussian process is nothing but we need to see what is the joint probability over Y. And these joint probabilities always can be defined in terms of a Gaussian, right? So Y means, so you have some set of input variable x1 to xn, right? And for every x1 to xn, you have y1 to yn, right? Y1 to yn. And collectively, if you see the joint probability of these variables from y1 to yn, you can define them in terms of a Gaussian distribution, right? And why I always draw this way, because the idea is if you just take a random vector out of a Gaussian distribution, right? So these are the some values, like it will be 2, this is 2.3, right? This is 3, then it is 2.3, and let's say it is 3. So if you want to see this vector as a function, what you can do, you just plot it this way. So this is the first component, right? So this is x1, let's say. So this is x2 corresponding to, this is corresponding to x3. This is corresponding to x4. And this is corresponding to x5, right? So let's say you have linearly separated from 0 to 1 some 5 points. So it is from 0 to 1 some 5 points. So let's say it is 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and somewhere like this, right? And then you plot 2, 2.3, 3, 2.3, and then 3, right? Now you just join them. When you join them, it sees like a function, right? So this is how, if it is like a, if you want to see it as a function, then this vector theoretically it should have an infinite dimension, right? Because for every real number from x1 to xn, it should have some value. But theoretically it is not computationally it is not possible. So we define this just on some set of values, that is from x1 to x5, right? And then we interpolate them. Let's say this is like it could be, because these are two things, right? So we are actually defining these variables on some set of variables, and even in prediction, we are predicting only on some set of variables, right? For an example, I am not predicting. For an example, if I give you these 5 values, I'm not predicting for infinite values. I'm still predicting for some set of values, like this is where I'm predicting. It may be where I'm predicting, right? It may be where I'm predicting. There where I can predict. So these are the values where I can predict, and still they are countable, right? Still it's not finite. So I'm actually dealing in finite space, right? Then I said that if you don't know the prior over Go functions, then you by default it is okay to assume that the prior the me because prior over a function means the distribution over a function which we feel that it is a Gaussian, but we don't know the which Gaussian it is. So it is okay to think that the mean of that Gaussian is 0, right? So if it is 100 dimension Gaussian, so in 100 dimension, you actually the mean is at 0. So if you take this 100, if you take a sample from this 100 dimension Gaussian from the mean, so it's look like this. So all are 0, 0, right? Because it is a 100 dimension. So there are 100 zeros here till here. So there are 100 zeros. When you plot this function, how this will look like? So you just discretize your play value from, let's say, 0 to 5. There's some 100 values. 1, 2, 3. You're discretizing x-axis till 100 and plot these values. So every value is 0 here. So it means the function will be nothing, but it is going on this axis, right? This is that axis. So this is your function which you assume that it is having a higher probability. So it's a 0 function, right? So if you take another point somewhere here and you just have some 100 dimensions here, if you plot it, it may sometime it may be possible that it may look like this, right? And we have shown this. So it may, this is one of the case. So has anybody tried that thing, like what we I have asked you to do that? Is there anybody in a class this who tried to plot this thing? It was really a fun exercise. So if you have not done it, so please do it today. So because it's always help you to intuitively see the things what you are doing here, right? So if you plot it this way, so then you need to find out the what is Graham's matrix. So the Graham matrix can be defined. Uh, Either you can define the inner product x transpose y, right? Either you can define this way, right? If you can define this way, you always get a linear functions, right? So for an example, if I just do x transpose x, right? If I do x transpose x, then I am always getting a lines here, right? I always get a line, but because I have used a basis function, so these lines can be converted into uh, some nonlinear structures also. But in short, because this what you remember why we have come up with a kernel function, because it needs a computation. So in short, I use a kernel trick and I define my kernels in terms of the, so inner product can be defined in terms of a kernel function, right? So this is how I'm defining in some infinite dimension, right? And this is the other way I'm defining the kernel function, right? So it is nothing but an inner product in some higher dimension. And if you draw some sample, you will see this kind of function, right? Very ziggy function. So can anybody tell me whether the neighboring correlation is high here between y1, yi and yj? So there are, I take any 2 points, yi and yj, right? So yi and yj is means I'm taking 2 points from any of the function, neighboring points. Let's say from this function, if I take these 2 points, so this is yi, yj. If I take these 2 points from this function, green function, this could be yi, yj. But the condition is they should be close to each other. Even I can take yi, yaj from here, from this function, right? So the same I do on the right hand side graph. So I take yi, yj here, right? Neighboring concept. So can anybody tell me which pair of yi, yj is more correlated, whether in the left side of a figure or the right side of a figure? which are more correlated? Correlation means if you change one of the thing, should change. It is a positive correlation, right? If you change one thing, the second will also change in same proportion or something like that. And if they are not correlated at all, so changing in one thing will not affect the change in other thing. And if they are not negative correlated, but they are correlated, if you change in positive side, the other will go to the negative, right? So what do you think? The left side is more correlated in terms of yi yj, or the right figure is showing me more correlation in terms of yi yj? What do you think? Are you guys there? Like, I'm connected. Can you just type yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think? Which y? Just to give a random thought. What is there? What do you think? Which yi yj pair is more correlated? Right? It's about the correlation. Okay. So let's talk. Let's read one by one. So Yashdeep is saying that right side is more correlated because there are sudden changes in curve. Okay. If there are sudden changes in curve, so it is a more correlation or less correlation, right? So it means if I give you yi and there are sudden changes, so it means it is a less probability that you can predict yj, because there is a sudden change. Either it can go here or it can go here, right? So if for the given this yi, you may not be sure either it go up or it may go down, right? So you are not very much sure. But on the left hand side, if I give you this, so it is approximately in the same range. They can go up and down, but in very small range, right? But not like here, it will go somewhere very high because there is an abrupt change, right? So then Shantanu is saying left side. Vineet Kumar Reddy is saying right. Sayyid Sufan is saying left, and Vedant is saying left. So I hope my explanation makes sense to you now, guys. So can you again answer which is more correlated, left or right? Can you rewrite your answers again? Very nice. Very nice. So it is because on left side, it is very much predictable that if you give me some y on left hand side, so yj will be in the neighborhood, in the proximity, very much proximity. So this kernel function actually is defining that if you are picking some function, so these content, these things, these component should be they should be smooth, right? Because each neighboring is more correlated, and the neighborhood is decided by the variance here, right? The neighbor is decided by the variance. If my variance is very small, then they will also go ziggy, right? But if you just take the variance very large, then it could be very smooth function, right? It could be very smooth function. So there is a parameter variance here that depends upon like how smooth I can take my neighborhood, right? So this is like how, and it is quadratic also, right? So there is smooth change in the effect of the neighborhood, but it is not quadratic, it is absolute. So there is no smooth changes in the effectiveness. So you can just do and run these exercises and see yourself. Okay. Before diving into the concept, I just want to give you a feel of one more concept of Gaussian distribution. Though I have used in kernel distribution when I was explaining you the kernel linear regression, right? So if you remember, there we had probability of joint probability of x comma t. Probability of x comma t, we have decided the component function we have taken this way. So the component function was Gaussian, where the mean is somewhere x minus xn, right? X minus xn and t minus tn. So the probability of this is how we have taken x minus xn, t minus tn. And let's say this was the mean is 0 and the covariance matrix is I sigma I. So we have factored that thing there, right? So we have factored that thing there. So we have said that it is x minus xn given 0 and sigma, right? Given 0 and sigma, multiply n t minus tn given 0 and sigma. So this is just explanation because I want to use the same thing again. So I thought just to add this explanation here. So let's see carefully that if we have a diagonalized matrix, right? So this is the formula for this multivariate Gaussian distribution, right? And if my covariance matrix is diagonalized, right? Diagonalized means it is having only diagonal entries. Then we can see that all components are actually independent. So if I just explain for bivariate Gaussian, so I have I have my vector is having two component x1 and x2, right? So find out the probability of given x1 and x2 is this way, right? So you just plug into the formula this to calculate the probability of x1 and x2, and you get this thing in exponent, right? You get this thing in exponent, and there it is a determinant here, right? Determinant of a matrix multiply by 2 pi n by 2. So here n is 2. So 2 here n is 2. So 2 by 2 is 1. So 2 pi will come as it is. So this is 2 pi is come as it is. And then you take the determinant of a matrix. So matrix is a diagonal matrix, right? And you take a determinant and then take a square root of that determinant. This is what it is showing, right? And then in exponent, you say that minus half multiply by x minus mu. So because it's a bivariate, so it means x minus mu1, x2 minus mu2, because it is a transpose. So you have to write it this way: x1 minus mu1, right? Then x2 minus mu2. So you can visualize this way because it is a transpose. So if you apply transpose, then this column vector will be a row vector, right? This is how you can see it. Then this diagonal matrix and then the column matrix. Fine. I hope this is clear to you guys. All notations and the readability is clear. Then you do some juggling. So you are taking a determinant here. And then when you take a determinant, you get these things. And when you apply, you will find it out that this is taking a determinant and doing a square root, you will get these things. So here you get a constant of this vector. And then you just do this matrix multiplication here. First you apply an inverse. So if it is a diagonal matrix, so applying inverse is nothing but you are applying an inverse for each component separately, right? This is how you're doing. So you are applying an inverse for every component because it is a diagonalized matrix. Not every you can't do this for every matrix, right? Because it is diagonalized matrix, that's why you are able to do this. Then you multiply this matrix with this vector, right? You get this form. And then finally you multiply this vector with this. You are taking a dot product, right? You are directly taking a dot product and you get this, finally this form. And because it is in a power of exponent, so you just because it is the power in exponent and it is a sum of something, so you are multiplying it, you can expand it in terms of a product of exponent of a. So it is like exponent of a plus b is equals to exponent of a into exponent of b. And what is this? This is nothing but it is an individual density for x1 and x2, right? So this is an individual density for x1, normal density, and it is a normal density for x2. So it is nothing but you are saying that you can multiply the normal density component wise. Can you write quickly yes or no that what I am trying to show you here is this, that you can, if the covariance matrix is diagonalized, you can factorize it. Very nice. Good. Okay. So it means every time I say that the components here are independent, then you can say that you can write it into a vector form, right? And if inverse is also true, if something you can write into a product of some densities, right? If there are something that there is a product of densities, you can write into a multivariate form, right? So inverse is also true. Is it making sense to you guys? So if I have multiplied two independent densities, then I can write into a multivariate Gaussian. If there are three components, then it is trivariate. If it is two component, then it is bivariate, and if it is n component, then it is n-variate Gaussian, right? Making sense? Yes or no? Fine. So I can write it inverse the other way also. So if there are multiplication of two independent components, then I can just put it into a multivariate form. Fine. So then the same, let's start with the Gaussian process for regression. Please see carefully. I will just walk you through step by step very slowly. So this is the old notation what we have used in linear regression. So I say that I have some mean yn. We add some noise which can be drawn from a Gaussian distribution, and finally I get a target value. Right? This is this time thing we have used so many times in linear regression. And just to write into a probabilistic form, we can write it this way, right? So for given yn, which is a mean, I'm just adding a noise, right? So it is like this. So there was a line. There was a line for given xn, you will get a yn, and if you get a yn, you get a tn by drawing a noise from it and then adding it to a yn, right? This is what we are doing. Fine. Because the noise is independent, so the assumption is the noise you add to this yn and the noise you add to this other yi and yj, they are independent, right? So if you add some noise, it is totally independent of the other noise which you have taken. It may be here, and if you take some other y, if you add a noise, it may be totally independent for the scene before, right? So the noise is independent, and it depends only on your yi and to get the value of ti, right? So because the noise is independent for each point, the joint distribution for t's. So I am interested in knowing only t, right? So what is joint distribution over t's? So I want to get a distribution over this t1, t2, t3, tn. I'm connected. Can you just quickly yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I just want to know the joint distribution over t1 to tn, right? To get this thing, I can write this way, right? So the thing is, I can find out my t. So just to get a t, I should know what is my y, right? And then add some noise to it. And because they are independent, I can write it into a multivariate Gaussian, where my covariance matrix is a diagonal matrix. And the variance for each noise was beta, right? As I have said here, beta. And I'm diagonalizing it. The fact is, because they are independent, I can write the probability in terms of a product for every ti. So it is like this. How you will get a joint probability, as we have said there in this likelihood function. So it is probability of t1, given y1 comma beta inverse, right? Then probability of multiply probability of t2 given y2 and b inverse. B inverse is common, right? And you're multiplying till tn, right? So it is a product of a densities. As I said here, if they are the product of densities and they're independent, you can rewrite them in terms of a multivariate Gaussian, right? So multivariate Gaussian of n dimension, right? So this is why I have included the slide on a this previous slide. So this is what we have said. Is this point clear to you guys? How I can write this thing, as I have already explained this thing in detail? Okay, very nice. Very good. Very nice. So now because I can say that my conditional distribution of target variable T1 to Tn, and why I'm saying it is conditional, because I know my y1 to yn, right? So it is a conditional distribution, and I can write into a multivariate Gaussian distribution this way. And this is my prior distribution, right? This is my prior distribution over a function. When I ask you to plot this, right? So this is when I ask you to plot this figure. I ask you to just take some linear points on x1 to xn, some 50 points, right? And then define some exponent over that, some gram matrix between these xi's, and take some random variables and plot them. So when you plot them, these are nothing but a function. This is a prior, right? This is a prior. So what we have said, so you assume some prior over the functions. Once you get a function, then you can get a target value, right? So this is a prior over all functions. Once you freeze a function, then from that function, you can get the target values, right? So it is nothing but it is this way, prior probability of y. What is the probability of seeing a function? Any function. And once the function is seen, what is the probability of seeing the target variable from that function? Because target variable are bit deviated from the function by noise, right? So this is what. If you want to get the joint probability, you need to marginalize what? Who will tell me? You need to marginalize what? To see the joint probability of a target variables. Where is K Ritvik here? I don't know. I haven't seen K somewhere. Where is K? So there is a probability. So I can write this term probability of y comma t given y into probability of y. It is a giant probability distribution. So it is probability of t comma y, right? So t comma y. I want to know only the probability of a t. So I can marginalize what? It's fine. So I hope can you write now what should I marginalize to get the probability of a t? Y, very nice. So I need to marginalize y over here. So this is the same formula which I am just asking you. I need to marginalize the y to get the probability of a t. So this t is nothing but a joint probability distribution over a target variables. Very important to understand. It is a joint probability distribution over my target variables, which is provided me in my data set. And the assumption is that target variable also include noise. That's why I have marginalized my y, right? So this is the joint probability distribution over t. And I have used some formula, which I have shown you in my previous slides there. So it is probability of a function and probability of a function, given function, what is the probability of a target variables. If I multiply them, then the probability of a target variable is this. If you plug and play all these things, okay, just for you, I will try to do this thing, right? So here, this is what is probability of a target variable, final variable I want to see. So let's write my probability of y first here in terms of this. So if I write probability of y, then what is my mean? My mean is 0 here, right? My mean is 0 because my prior I had assumed that if this is what it is, right? So mean is 0 and this is my gram matrix, right? So the probability of y given my mean, which is 0 vector, and my covariance matrix k, right? And then probability of t given y. Okay, they are written, sorry, I have already written. So t given y is nothing, the probability of a y and this is my matrix. Now I map this one by one. So I map this one by one to my formula. So my 0 is this mu, right? My 0 is this mu, right? My k is this lambda inverse, right? My y here, what is A? A is identity here, right? Because I need to write in this term, right? But I have this y only, right? So it means my A is identity here. Then I multiply y plus b, and b is also 0 here, right? It's a 0 vector. Then I will get y from this, right? And my L inverse is nothing, but it is a B inverse I, right? So this is my L inverse, right? So then I want to find out the probability of T. So then the probability of T is nothing. Probability of T is nothing. Then I need to calculate first my mean. So this is my mean. So A is identity, right? So A is identity. Mean is 0. Plus B is 0, right? B is also 0, right? This is also 0. So my target variable mean is 0. I0 plus 0, right? Now I calculate the variance. So first I take L inverse. L inverse is nothing but beta inverse I. So it is beta inverse IN. Beta inverse IN plus A is identity. So I will take identity here. Lambda inverse is K here, right? So lambda inverse is K here. Then A transpose, it means identity transpose is identity. Then if I simplify it, it is nothing but beta inverse IN plus K, right? Because you're multiplying both sides with identity, it will not change anything. Plus K, right? Plus K. So if you see this beta inverse identity, it is nothing but a diagonal matrix. Diagonal is nothing but beta inverse, beta inverse, beta inverse, beta inverse, right? And this beta inverse, it is n by n dimension. And then you have Gram matrix plus K, right? Then it is a Gram matrix, which is nothing but K x n comma m, right? So K n comma m, right? This is this. So if you just if you add component wise, then only, so this is an indicator function. So it is only 1 when n equals to m, right? So it is only 1 when n equals to m. So it means it is only valid for the diagonal entries, and for the rest of them it will be it will not appear. So if you just find out the resultants, if you see this resultant matrix C, what will happen? Only the diagonal matrix, only the diagonal elements will get added with beta, and the rest will be the same as what is the Gram matrix, right? And the rest will be the same as what is Gram matrix. Only this component will come affect at the diagonal. Is this clear to you guys?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Very good. Rest of you can you type your opinion, yes or no? Good. Very nice. So I hope this is now once you are able to understand and read these things, so all things will fall into perspective. So now I know that my Gaussian my distribution over my target variable T is nothing but a Gaussian distribution where my mean is again 0 vector, and my covariance matrix is C, right? And C is defined like this, right? C is defined like this. Okay, that's cool. Before diving now, just keep this thing in your head. I will continue from here onwards. Before I will introduce some for 2-3 other concepts, then I will connect them all, right? So remember till here that what you have done is you found out the joint probability over a target variables, right? This is what you got. Okay. 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 I will come again. So can you tell me now, guys? I will be really impressed and surprised if you give me this answer. So I have a distribution, joint probability distribution over the target variables, right? So this is my target variables in my data set, right? So I have a joint distribution over these target variables. So this is my T1, right? I don't know which Y could have produced this. I don't know which Y could have produced this, but because I know that there is a distribution over these over these target variable, and I know that distribution. That is a good part. I need to predict some other values also. Let's say here, 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 here. I want to predict all these values at the discrete places, but they are so close that when you plot them, you can see it as a function. So I want to predict these at these places, which could be my predictions, right? So 3 plus 3, 3 plus 2, 5 plus 8, 8 plus 5, 13, and again 5, 18. Some 18 places I want to predict, right? And in my data set, I have some 5 points, right? What do you think? How I can predict at these 18 places once I know the joint distribution over these 5 places? Okay, so it may be hard to connect. First, I will give you the picture and then I will ask a question. So what I will do, I first construct a vector, huge vector. So let's say these are the 18 places where I want to predict, right? And these are the 5 places where I already know. So these are the 5 places where I already know. So I change the color. So these are some 5 places where I already know the values, right? So rather than saying 18, let's say these are 20. So it will be easy to write and again. So I want to predict at some 20 places, and I already know some values at 5 places. So in terms of X, I have 25 places altogether, right? I can arrange in any order, it doesn't matter. But let's say arrange from left to right, right? It doesn't matter. I will let you know like why it doesn't matter, right? Or you can put all those points which you already know before. So these 5 points will come here, which you already know, and these 20 places you don't know, right? Where you want to predict. So this is a vector of dimension 25. If you calculate the Gram matrix, do I need target values to calculate the Gram matrix? Do I need target values to calculate the Gram matrix? Who will tell me? Only one answer? Do I need to calculate Gram matrix? Do I need to know target values to calculate Gram matrix? Just to show you, this is a Gram matrix, how you will calculate, right? You can calculate every entry using these kernel functions. And it depends upon like what kind of kernel you use. Then you see those kind of functions you will there. So do I need to know the target values to calculate the gram matrix? Yes. Please write yes or no. If you have any confusion, please let me know. Then I will try to clarify. So the straight answer is no, right? So it just tell you, gram matrix is tell you how your X are correlated, right? In the domain. How your X are correlated in the domain. So you don't need actually target values because you are not doing anything with the target values there. So gram matrix is nothing but it's a correlation between the input domain, which is the X. So then what you can do here, you calculate the gram matrix. The dimension of this gram matrix will be 20 by 20, right? Oh, sorry, 25 dimension vector it was. So it was 25 by 25 dimension vector. So the matrix will be 25 by 25, right? Because of the spatial arrangement, I get 5 by 5 matrix here for those X which I know, where I know the values, right? And for these 20 by 20 matrix, I don't know the values, but I don't know how they're correlated for the target value. This matrix, which I will get here, it is actually how my known X are correlated with the unknown X. And it is a transpose of this matrix. So they are actually, if this matrix is, if this is A, this is B, right? This is B, then this is B transpose, right? And this is C. So matrix A is a gram matrix for the known samples. Matrix C is a gram matrix for the unknown samples where I want to predict. Matrix B is a correlation of unknown with known, right? But only between these space here only in the domain. Still, I am not using anywhere my target values. Is this clear? Yes or no? Can you quickly write yes or no for this? Very good. Very good. So before ending, I just want to wrap this concept. So here I am calculating the gram matrix. And you know what I have done here? I have calculated the joint distribution over target values. Over target values, right? Where I have used the probability of Y and probability of T given Y, right? In this case, I have not used any target values so far, right? Right? And for this target, when I calculate these values, I know some values where in the data set which were present there. And for some of them, I don't know the values, right? When I calculate the joint probability distribution over T, there will be some distribution in 25 dimensional space, right? In 25 dimensional space, where 5 of the dimensions are already known to me. Where 5 of the dimensions are already known to me, and rest of the 25 dimensions I don't know, right? Rest of the 25 dimensions I don't know. So the probability over the target variables T, here I know 5 dimensions and I don't know 20 dimensions. What do you think? What should I do now? I can marginalize it, right? On my first slide, I told you that if there is a Gaussian distribution, you can marginalize and you can do conditional, then the still things that will be normal. So if you do conditional distribution, so you just break this target variable in this way. So first 5 things are known. So these are the XA. right? The set, these are the values that are known. You can show it by a set of XA, and these are the values which you don't know. That is why XB. Then you just calculate the target distribution. What is the probability of XB given XA, right? Given XA. It means you are saying you want to find out the Gaussian distribution over all those unknown places when you know some places already, right? And what is this Gaussian distribution then? It will also be a Gaussian distribution, right? And then what you can do from here? You can take a mean of it, right? So if you take a mean of it, it will be nothing. This is the place for mean, this is the place of mean, this is the place of mean. And then this is a mean, this is a mean, this is a mean here, this is a mean. Component wise, there will be a mean, right? Because it's a multivariate Gaussian. And when you just plot them in a continuous way, for when you merge every mean together, what you will see a kind of a function that go somewhere like this, right? So this is the overall idea. Tomorrow I will wrap it using all those equations and functions what I have gone through. I will upload this lecture. Please go through it before starting the tomorrow's lecture. I just strongly encourage you to plot these functions first, right? These functions on your own, and just see this, rewatch this lecture. Okay. If you have any question, please let me know. Otherwise, drop your attendance. Thank you.